Alright guys, here is 3.5, 4 years of bow fishing experience coming at you. There's some great stuff in here, probably. I'm going to cover the things that I think you need to have to bow fish, and then the things that you really should have to bow fish. I'll start with the most important, then go to least important. But let's start out with bows. Generally you'll see people on a river with an old bow. I think this bow is probably from like the 90s. They work, but they're cheap, like off Craigslist, thrift stores. You'll get them for like $35, $40, and they work. Unfortunately, with old bows, you can't easily change the draw length or weight like you can with more modern bows. But whenever it comes to bow fishing, expect that your bow will get beat up. Treat it with respect, of course, but just know that there is going to be times where your bow is going to get some dirt on it. So that's why most people go with a cheap old bow. When I first started, I used this little youth bow. Absolutely love this thing. It gets up to like 50 pounds, which I say is more than enough to bow fish. I think the ideal poundage is 40 to 45. I'll tell you why in a different video. But I love this thing just because of how small and compact it was, or is. I could get into water that was like up to my stomach, and I could still keep the bow out of the water and draw back, shoot fish. I had a blast with this thing. Unfortunately, one of the limbs cracked up here. Now I'm not really sure what to do with this bow. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. So if you can get yourself a used youth bow that's still in good condition, I'd say snatch it up. I love these things. The con to these is that you can't get a draw length quite as far back as maybe you think you'd need. But again, I kept this guy at a very short draw length, shot a lot of fish with it, loved it. Currently, I use this bow. It was about $170 new, nothing special or fancy about it. But realistically, I would be sad if I dropped this in the river and lost it, compared to this bow, where if I dropped it in the river and lost it, I'd be a little bit sad, but it's an old bow. So the main thing to take into account whenever you're choosing a bow to bow fish, don't go out and spend a lot of money on it. It's going to get beat up. It won't last forever. But make sure that it feels good. I love those youth bows because they're just so mobile compared to this thing. Now let's talk about bow fishing reels. The one I have on this bow is the AMS Retriever Pro, I believe. I've had it for as long as I've been bow fishing, 4 years. I've had problems with it, but those problems have been mainly due to me just not caring about it very much. These things are great because you can reel in line very easily. Whenever you shoot it or you're ready to shoot, all you have to do is draw back and fire. There's no resistance for this line to come out of your reel. You don't need to click any buttons or anything. You're ready to go. That's one thing I really like about this reel. But that can also be a downside. There have been many times where I'll be walking through the woods. This gets caught on a tree branch. I continue walking because I'm not very self-aware, and I look back and 20, 30 feet of my line are now strung across the woods, and it's not a huge deal, it's just kind of an annoyance. So like you saw, there will be times where this line gets tangled, but another pro to this reel that you're using this really good thick line that can take some abrasion, whereas the other like thinner line that you'll see in a spin cast reel can't hold up quite as well. So those reels are great, however they do cost over $100. If I lost that reel today, I'd buy another one in a heartbeat after crying for a little while. It's just very fun and easy to use. The next step down when it comes to bow fishing reels is a spin cast reel. It almost looks like one of those little Zebco fishing reels, but it's bigger. Those will run you anywhere from $40 to $80. However, you do need to figure out how to mount those on your boat. Generally, you'll mount them into the hole where you'll put a stabilizer. That's the word. So you're still spending a good chunk of money. It is going to be pretty convenient to reel in. The main downside to those spin cast reels is that most of them you have to click a button before you're ready to shoot. Because if you don't, you pull your arrow back, you shoot, the arrow goes flying, the line does not, and it snaps that line. So be cognizant of that. The next step lower is sort of like a half yo-yo spool reel. You'll see these like Cajun reels. The pro to those is that they're very cheap, like $20, $30. They're not as convenient to reel in. They'll work, but they're not quite as convenient as another reel. So the main idea to keep in mind when you're thinking about bow fishing reels, the more money you spend on it, the more enjoyable the experience is going to be for the most part. Now let's talk about arrows and arrow tips. A good bow fishing arrow will run you about $17 to $21. Some great brands are AMS and Muzzy. I've never tried a True Glow arrow, but their price range is up there, so I think maybe they're all right arrows. I'm an AMS guy all the way. I love their products. It's not going to be the shaft of the arrow that'll cause you problems. It'll be the slide. AMS slides are great. Muzzy slides are bulky, and I've had them fall apart. That was probably on me, but I don't like them. And with any arrow, a lot of stress is going to be on your stopper, and I've had nocks fall off of AMS arrows. I think that's just something that happens with arrows. This is the basic bow fishing arrow tip. You got a good large barb to help keep the arrow from slipping out of the fish. Whenever you're ready to get the fish off the arrow, you twist the tip, and then you can reverse the barb. These are pretty basic. I have had quite a few fish get off of these arrows, but they're cheap and they work most of the time. Now, if you want to take a step up, this one is called the AMS anchor tip, and basically the barbs are collapsible, so they go into the fish. You're creating a very small hole, and then whenever the arrow attempts to come out of the fish, it's gripping on very, very firmly to the outside of that fish. These arrows are great if you want to make sure you secure more fish, but I have had fish come off of this arrow before. The pro to this, less fish get off. The con, and there are some good cons to this arrow. One, this arrow itself was like $40, $45. This is not worth $40 in my opinion. The tip is super cool, but the problem, it goes very cleanly into brush. But whenever I try to pull that arrow back out, I'm just raking up bushes. And it's very easy for this tip to get caught on stuff. It's essentially a grappling hook, which is, I guess, what it's supposed to be. Maybe I just need to stop missing so much. So main point with arrows, spend a good $17 to $25 on an arrow, especially if you're starting off. If you want to up your game, these broadheads are cool. They're not great, but they are cool. You need polarized sunglasses because it takes the glare off the water. You can see fish a lot deeper. Not necessary, but they help you see a lot more fish. When it comes to sunglasses, I'm never going to spend more than $15 on a pair of sunglasses, because whenever I go out on the river, I have to understand that there's a chance that I'm going to lose everything. And I would cry if I lost a $50 pair of sunglasses or a $100 pair of sunglasses. $15 pair, I'd be sad, but I can still purchase another one. Now, I think it's a great idea to carry backup parts with you, especially out on a river, whether that's an extra arrow or extra arrow parts. I bought the AMS arrow kit. It comes with slides, which are, to me, worth their weight in silver, honestly. Comes with nocks, stoppers, and then I also have some super glue for the nocks. Now, I completely understand that no one wants to spend $25 on arrow parts that they might never use, but in my case, there have been a few times where I go out bow fishing. I'm out on the river, an hour upriver, and part of my arrow breaks, and then I just have to cut the trip short. But I started carrying this so that I can repair arrows as needed while I'm out on the river, and I don't need to cut the trip short. Now the final category of stuff I think you should have for bow fishing, I'm going to call sidearms. Basically anything that you'd use to either secure or kill carp. Personally, I don't like the idea of letting a carp suffer for more than a few minutes, so I'll kill them once I get them inside my boat. A tool that you can use is a gaff. I would say only buy or bring a gaff if you're going to be bow fishing in a boat that you can move around in easily. I bow fish by foot and in kayak. Quite honestly, there hasn't been a real instance where I've needed to use this. Most of the time I'll just use it because I have it, and it's a real hassle to carry around. It's essentially a whole nother like half a fishing rod that you need to carry, and I just don't think it's worth it in my opinion. But if you like a gaff, by all means use a gaff. When it comes to killing fish, normally I'll use a knife. I used to have Walmart carries this $3 fixed blade black knife with a sheath. Love that thing. But I dropped it in the river and I lost it. I didn't cry because it was $3, but I love that thing. I'll definitely be getting another one. So now I've just been carrying a regular knife with me. I like fixed blades because the blade isn't going to pinch in on you while you're stabbing. That's what I use knives for when I'm bow fishing, is stabbing, not slicing. And folding knives are not so much meant to be stabbed with because that lock can break sometimes. Cheapest thing you can stab a fish with is a screwdriver. Spend a couple minutes sharpening it and you have a tool that's going to work to kill your fish very quickly. Now knives can be dangerous, especially when you're stabbing them and swinging them around. So you can also use some blunt objects to smack fish in the head with. I've used hammers. Hammers are great because you can also use the claw to hook under the gill, almost like a gaff, but they're also kind of heavy, a little bit inconvenient to carry around, and if you drop them in the river, they're sinking to the bottom. One thing I'd like to start bringing out on a river is this little bat, because I think it'll float. It's not quite as easy to hurt myself with as a knife, and I think it'll be a little bit easier to take fish out of their misery with. Now before I get into the last subject of things I think you should look at for bow fishing, I want to just tell you the general lesson I've learned with bow fishing supplies. The more money you spend on something, equipment-wise, the more enjoyable, the easier it'll be to use. Mainly I'm talking about bow fishing reels and arrows, but also be willing to part with anything that you bring out on a river, because there's a chance that you're going to lose it no matter what. Now the final thing I want to talk about is pretty simple. It's footwear. The main thing I need to get across to you guys when it comes to footwear is never wear Crocs on a muddy riverbank. Never have I done that and been like, man, that was a good idea. It's just a lot of slipping and cursing and wondering why I did this for the 4th time. So you can wear those knee-high rubber wader boots. Those tend to give me a false sense of security. I'll go into water deeper than I should, and now I'm carrying around a live well around my feet for the rest of the day. So I'll sometimes wear old tennis shoes. Those work great. If you're on really slick and muddy riverbanks, I'd go with like cleats that you'd use for soccer or football, or track spikes. And again, they're going to be getting muddy, so make sure they're not nice. Make sure they're either old or from a thrift store. So that's just about everything that I think you need with bow fishing. If I missed something, by all means, let me know in the comments down below. I want to learn like actually what you guys bring out on the river, what you think is necessary and what isn't. Most things that I've talked about, like arrows, bow fishing reels, I have links to in the description. Never done Amazon affiliate before, so maybe I'll make a couple cents, maybe I won't. I don't know. Feel free to check that out. And by all means, if you have any questions, let me know. I love talking about bow fishing. Thanks, and I'll see you in my next video.